Hello, everyone. This is Nicholas Peter Ugero, and I have on my friend
Lindsay.
Lindsay. Thank you for participating with me in this. I am so nervous, everybody. So I'm just gonna start off. Just Danny and Vanessa, thank you so much for joining us. They
Hi.
are from the Sovereign Lovestream. They've made many episodes, very informative, very empowering, and a lot of good information. Sometimes guests are on, so it's a lot of good information. I highly recommend it. So, how are you guys doing today?
Good.
Yeah, we're doing great. We're having an awesome
We had
Sunday.
a
Oh
really
my
great
God.
weekend.
We had an awesome weekend. So we're kind of having we're trying to have a nice, relaxing Sunday today.
Awesome,
we
awesome.
we
That's
did
great to
a
hear.
we did a new moon ceremony on Friday night, which was really powerful. And then yesterday we went and did ice baths. We did a breathwork session, 40-minute breathwork session, then an ice bath, and then Vanessa did a group tarot reading for the whole group that was there. I guess it was about 10 people or so. So we had a really powerful weekend. It was really
Yeah.
good.
Wow. How'd you feel after the ice bath? How long were you able to handle sitting
Well,
there?
it was Vanessa's first time. I'll let her tell you about that. But I broke my record. My record was 2 minutes and 20 seconds. I stayed for 3 minutes
Wow,
yesterday.
that's a big increase.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I was pretty
Yeah.
impressed with myself.
I was in for 2 minutes. I made it the whole 2 minutes. And it was really interesting. I was nervous. I've gone with Danny. He's been doing it for I guess almost a year now.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been feeling that it wasn't for me. I've been working to warm up my body to like raise my body temperature. We're trying to have a baby, so it was important for me to get my body temperature up. And for some reason in this one, I felt very clear guidance that I was meant to be there and actually do the ice bath. So I went and I did it.
And she was like a champ. You could check it out on the Sovereign Love Instagram. I put up the video, and she got in like the goddess she is. She slipped into the water like it was nothing. And me, like for the first 10-15 seconds, I'm like fighting off a panic attack.
Yeah, it
That's
definitely takes
awesome.
a lot of like self-control and coming back to the breath. So it's a really powerful exercise. It's a great healing modality of how to get control of your own thoughts, because in a situation like that your brain is telling you a million things. And when you practice the breath work before that, you learn to calm the mind in a way that then going forward into other situations when you're having extreme anxiety, like you were just telling us, Nicholas. There are you once you have the practice of the breath work and things like that, then you're able to say, oh, these voices are not really my internal voice. It's my ego, my defense mechanisms. I'm not really going to die in this ice cold water. I can handle it. And with the breath work, for me, one of the things that I experienced was we were guided through the breath work, and I was having a really hard time keeping up with the pace. And I felt that my body was telling me, find your own rhythm. And I started breathing on my own rhythm at my own time. And I was way more comfortable. I felt like once I learned how to honor my body and what it needs, everything works out. So when I got into the water, I knew how to slow my breath down because I had just been practicing that in the breath work. So, like, all of these lessons go into your daily practice, into your daily struggles. It's really amazing to try something new and rewire your
Absolutely.
brain.
I highly recommend it. If you can find a place in near you that's doing, like, Wim Hof has certified trainers all over the country. If you can find an event, I highly recommend it. It is so just the lessons you get from the experience, like us telling you what we got from it is great, and maybe it inspires somebody to go do it, but it does not compare to actually going through the process and experiencing it yourself, and realizing that using your breath, you can overcome any anxiety, any fear, any stress just by using a breathing technique. It's really powerful.
Oh, what's been one for you that's been really good? If you don't mind giving a brief kind of example of what you would do in a certain situation where you were really nervous
Uh,
or
Nervous or anxious. I think coming back to the breath always helps for me.
Mhm.
Kind of what tends to happen when we're stressed is that we're not in the present moment, right? We start thinking about all of the other things that could happen, that did happen, that will happen, that might happen, that potentially happened, that might have happened and you don't know about. It's like the brain goes in every direction. And when you come back to the breath, you're back in the present moment. And being in the present moment is very grounding. It anchors you into all I have control of is who I am in this moment. And everything else can kind of slow down. And then now you have a clearer perspective of, am I worrying about something that might have happened or could happen, or is it just a story I'm telling myself? For me, going back to nature is always grounding and calming when I have a lot of anxiety. I struggled with anxiety for years. So for me, breath work helps, meditation. And for me, meditation doesn't have to be me sitting down and in lotus position and closing my eyes and breathing for 20 minutes. Sometimes it's walking meditation. I can take a walk, and I love to just take walks in our neighborhood. We have lots of trees, lots of plants, and I'll just like look at the flowers, the birds, or I'll take a walk in the park. I like to ground even in the winter. I'm willing to take off my shoes and my socks and just let my feet touch the earth and feel the energy of the earth holding me and carrying me. So,
I think the most versatile that you can use in any situation at any moment is just to close your eyes and take a few deep breaths and just exhale whatever is stressing you. And for me, I'm like, you're God in a human body, and or the way the Bible says it, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, right? So if you just close your eyes, take a deep breath, inhale the Spirit of God, and exhale stress. To me, that's like you could do that anywhere, at any moment, So
yeah.
Yeah, I like that Bible verse, Philippians 4:13. That's one of my favorites. So.
Oh, you actually have the chapter and verse memorized. I haven't memorized quite that to that level.
But yeah, that's actually funny you brought that up, because I was trying to do that today with him, because I was the one that went into church and he just stayed back in the car. He was having a hard time. So, but yeah, that situation was tough, but I think I tried to handle it in the best way possible. Just, I just kind of told them that, we're here at church right now. We're in the present, don't think about the past, and don't think about like the what ifs and the worries and the things that can happen, because why worry about something that, hasn't happened yet? And I feel like kind of I've been like a broken record saying that. So, but I know it's difficult when you're struggling with self-esteem and just confidence. It's hard to not think about, the future and the past and everything that went wrong. And, but I noticed that he was struggling with that today, for sure.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you were struggling with?
Yeah. So it's on Friday. I was asked by her because she, as you guys know, she saw someone while we were dating this year, and I wanted her to also get into last year a little bit if we had time, or I want to make time to do that. But so he ended up starting to follow her again on Instagram, and so she told me about it, and so it just huge trigger, just really like my day just went straight down right in the morning on Friday while I was at work, and I was just breaking down, and I
Well,
said a couple.
talk about that before you go further
Yeah.
into the story. Talk about what made you What do you feel him following her?
Because I had said months ago after I found out about this, and she gave him a message saying that she wanted to try with me still. I knew that he was going to reach out in some form. I knew it was just going to be a matter of time in my mind. And so it just, to see that, it just kind of said, okay, he's still interested. She's saying she's not, but I don't know.
What was the feeling that you
So
had?
yeah,
Because you're great at telling the story, and I'm great at telling the story too. And what were you feeling when you saw that? What was the feeling you had?
like the physical feeling, like a racing heart.
No, the emotion. What's the emotion? Fear? Oh no, he's following her.
Yeah,
That means they're gonna get
fear,
back in contact. If they start
fear,
talking again, maybe she'll leave me for him.
fear.
Right?
Yeah,
Does that sound?
yeah,
That's what I'm really getting at. I want you to talk about what the feelings that you were having were.
yeah. So I was fearful. I was getting kind of triggers from the past and just those memories. And because this person is linked to January through March, it's also that stuff has been brought back into this as well. So it's not just the June thing or the me finding out in July, but it's also earlier this year that's kind of been accompanying it because it's the same person. So it's I still have that vividly in my mind, a lot of the things I went through. So that's made it even worse in my mind. So I kind of like I start thinking about those kind of things. So yeah, I get sometimes like I can get a surge of anger. Um, Sometimes I can get deeply, deeply depressed and have suicidal thoughts, like having the thought of packing all my prepping items into my car and just leaving it at her on her driveway and just biking somewhere and just running away. Like just trying to make a big statement and just like leaving and just giving up because I've just literally gotten so negative. And it wasn't until Friday that I realized by looking at some articles that I do show a lot of the same signs of PTSD, and it's not good. So like literally,
Yeah.
there's like 17 things on the article, and it was literally every single one of them. Just like the shadow work list that we did in the last interviews. So it was scary for me to think of that, and I can see how that is the case because I have gotten to such dark places in my mind, and the images and just the timeline of everything is still so vivid, even though it's been almost half a year. So it's
What would you say the core fear is?
that I can never get over it. Probably because it's been so long now.
The fear that makes the whole situation trigger you to begin with. Is it a fear of being alone? Is it a fear of losing Lindsay specifically? Is it a fear of being alone in general? What is the feeling that makes you decide like maybe I just want to end it all? Maybe I just want to run away. Maybe I just don't want to even be on this planet anymore. What is it that you're feeling there?
Because there's times where I don't think I could forgive her. So if that's something that is true, then I have to end things, and I am scared of being alone. Um, and I'm just still incredibly scared to just face what I'm going through. And I know I need to face it in order to actually move on in any form in my life. Otherwise, I am going to self implode. Just physically, just the toll it's taking on my body, it's just not good. So it's just yeah, just not knowing what the right answer is. So yeah, and I also feel like I'm never gonna get over it. So then that scares me. So it kind of makes me puts me in that defeated mood or in that state of mind where it's what am I even doing then? I feel like I'm just wasting her time. I might as well just suffer alone and just let her move on because that's the other scary thing. It's because she's been doing so much better. So I get even more scared and more worried that she's just gonna find somebody better. Um, and then I feel how unfair is that because she's like it was because of her that I kind of had a lot of this trauma this year, um, as a result of trauma I caused her, which that's also where the catch is.
So then it's not really her fault, is it?
No, not entirely. Not with like especially January. Like in January, I definitely understood that. So that was definitely something I understood. But then after 6 months, then something happens. So that it's just I see it a little separated from what I had done. But yeah, she didn't do any of the work either for her trauma. So it's a perfect example of if you don't work on it, it's going to kind of come back later and come in a different form. So, Yeah, I'm just
Do you think he can get over it?
Yes. I
yeah, because I'd love for you to explain your story a bit. I'd love for Lindsay to be able to hear that, and because Danny and I have a lot of similarities with a lot of the issues we had,
yeah.
which is what's made this
I
whole interaction between all of us this entire time over the past year or so valuable and impactful for
yeah.
me, just because of this a lot of the similarities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, these are common human themes. I don't think it's specific to just us or you. I think a lot of us go through these similar themes. Those of us that are of similar archetypes and similar ways of handling things will go through similar experiences. First, I want to thank you for being vulnerable and open to sharing your story and sharing your experience, your emotions. The reason why we ask you what you're feeling is because the mind is very good at trying to rationalize all of it and and kind of say, oh yes, I'm angry right now because of this and that. This justifies what I'm feeling. This behavior, like if we rationalize all of it, then we don't have to face the feelings, and the feelings is where the real work is. And the ego does a fantastic job of trying to keep us distracted with the rational parts
Mm-hmm.
of the experience. And
She
so
hurt me. I have a right to be hurt. I have a right to be angry. So it makes sense. There's my box. I get to keep all that in that box, but there's no healing there,
mhm.
right? Yeah, you have the right to be angry. She has the right to be angry. Maybe you could say she was justified, and you know what? You deserved it. So if we go into the story aspect of it, then it's tit for tat and it's keeping score and you get nowhere.
And I think that once you open up yourself to do the healing work, things are going to come out that are very uncomfortable. The stuff that you've been suppressing, the stuff that your addictions have been trying to numb out, are now coming to the surface. So first of all, I want to say congratulations, because it's very painful and it's very difficult, but you're doing it. You're here. You're in the place of, here's all my shit. Now what do I do with it? And that's a beautiful place to be. It doesn't feel that way. I know, because we have definitely been in that place, in that deep, dark place where it feels like there's no coming back from this. We had many situations
Oh yeah.
where we felt that's it. There's no way to come back from this. I mean, Danny spent a night in jail. We would fight in front of people. I would be embarrassed. Like, we can never be around these people again. What are they going to think of us? I can never go back and be with him in front of the people that have seen some of this stuff, because where's my self-respect? Where's, like, what am I saying about myself if I'm allowing this behavior, if I'm allowing these situations to persist? And all of those are stories that our ego tries to put out there to prevent you from actually facing the work that needs to be faced. And so, when talking about betrayal, when talking about being hurt because of betrayal, it's very complicated, because the ego does a really great job of putting it on the other person. Oh, if this person hadn't done that, I wouldn't be feeling hurt right now. And you can look at it and say, yeah, well, my behavior caused her to do this thing, but this other thing, that wasn't because of me. And so I have a right to be angry at her because of that. But the truth is, it all comes from within. When Danny and I were going through the darkest periods of our relationship, and I had kind of piece together a lot of the lies, a lot of the things that there's a lot of our intuition, right? Our inner knowing. You knew that this guy was eventually going to reach out, and now it happens, and it's like, oh my God, my intuition was right. There were a lot of things that I knew about Danny that I couldn't prove, and whenever they would come up, I would be like, see, I knew it. I knew it all along, and he lied to me. He was gaslighting me. He made me think that I was crazy, but look, it all came out. So probably every fear that I've had is going to come true, because this thing came true, and that's where the brain goes, right? all of that, yeah, was frustrating. But the truth of the matter is that I was allowing myself to be treated that way because that's what I felt I deserved. That's where the work was. The work wasn't Danny has to change. The work was I needed to see myself differently so that I could set clear boundaries. And if at that point Danny couldn't respect those boundaries, then I could move on without feeling like I was losing everything because I would then know my worth. And that's the point that I had to get to, where I had to recognize what I was worth, what I deserved, and no longer did I need to settle for anything less than that. And I didn't have a fear that I wouldn't find that out in the world, because if I deserve that, it's out there. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
No, that makes total sense because yeah, earlier this year in February, um, she had gone to Texas to see him again, and in that span of time when she was still there, that's where I had that kind of realization where, you know what, I'm good now. I think
Mhm.
I can handle not associating with this with her anymore, and I feel confident in the support structures I've kind of had in my corner. Danny was one of them. Um, my friend at the time, Jenny, and her fiance, because I had hurt both of them really badly. So getting a lot of that sort of forgiveness and love, and that definitely helped me out. So yeah, I got to that. That totally makes sense because I got to that point at that time, and
Mhm.
it seems so out of reach now. Like kind of building myself back up to that point because I've had thoughts of, or we've kind of had it where we stopped seeing each other for a couple days, but I don't think it's been more than 3, I think 3 or 4 maybe.
I think it's I think it's been at some point like probably like a week, maybe a week and a half.
In the
But
past 4 months.
probably like once maybe.
Okay. Yeah, because for me it's just seems so hard to go through the day and just because I and that's the thing, like I don't have any support structures in my life, and I've gotten so much trauma that I've kind of crippled myself into place. Even though I know if I go exercise, I'll have more positivity, and if I do this and this, I'll have more positivity. I just kind of get into that frozen, just I'm a
Mhm.
child in a fetal
Into
position
the
type of
funk.
mode. Yeah.
You get into the funk, and it's hard to get out of the funk once you're in it. Do you have something you want to say? Do you want to continue to feel hurt and angry and jealous? Do you want to feel that way? Do you enjoy feeling that way?
I do not enjoy feeling that way, but I do want to continue that because it's almost like the ego, the self-defense. Like I'm in such high alert mode that I think to myself, why on earth would I put my guard down?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
just
Well,
like with her, like well, on my end, like I would say something like, "Oh, I'm not going to do this again," or tell her something and then I go back on it, and then I say it again and I go back on it. So she's at by January of this year, she was like, "Okay, you've said this before." So
there was a point where I told Vanessa, I can't promise that I'm not going to cheat on you again because I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to keep saying it and then going back on it, and then my word means nothing. So there were times, and she would get really frustrated and upset when I would say that, but I was being honest because I didn't know for sure. I was in the throes of my addiction, and it was powerful. But what I wanted to get at was when you first said, "Oh, this guy followed her on Instagram and she told me about it and I got really triggered." My first thought was, "Oh, she told him about it. She's being transparent. She's letting him know. This is progress. This is a good thing." But can you focus on that part of it, that here he is following her on Instagram, big deal. Anybody could follow anybody on Instagram, and she came to you and she told you. She didn't have to tell you, right? So there's progress in your relationship that you're able to communicate about this thing. Now she knew, I'm sure, and Lindsay, you can confirm, so I don't have to speak for you, that you were going to be upset when she told you this, but she had the commitment to that honesty to tell you anyway, knowing that it was going to trigger you, right? That's a good thing. Unless she did it to hurt you. Did you do it to hurt him? Did you tell him to hurt him? No, of course not.
Yeah, I actually remember I sent him a text on Friday, and I said he was kind of like already like very upset at that point, and he didn't seem like he wanted to talk to me. And so I sent him this long text, and I just said, like, I really didn't have to tell you this, and I didn't want, like, I didn't really, part of me didn't want to, because I knew the reaction that was gonna come from it. And so I really didn't want to, because that whole past week it was better. And I'm just like, I don't want to like ruin like this momentum we have. If if I don't tell him, like, that's going to be terrible. And because that's what we're trying to achieve here, is honesty and vulnerability. And since like I've been walking with the Lord, more so now, like I'm just different, and my values and beliefs are different. And who am I to like not tell him, so
If you want to just explain why it's like, yes, like you were upfront and told me, but if you want to kind of explain like March, remember how we had kind of had that agreement before, and how you were upfront, and just why it still would kind of be iffy for me.
So explain a little bit more.
In March, after you, I guess I'll start, and then if you want to, okay. So in March, by March, she was still kind of talking to him, and I was trying to have her tell him the truth, because I knew that if I were in his position and I found out the information, like that she was seeing me also, I wouldn't want to pursue her. And she knew that too. So she was not wanting to tell him the truth. And by March, I gave her an ultimatum: either you tell him or I'm done, because I can't do this anymore.
Tell
this is
him
just,
that she's seeing both of you mean?
I wanted her to tell him the truth, that she's been seeing me, because he had no idea. And so she told him.
And this was because you cared about his feelings, or because you figured he would stop talking to her if he knew that?
I did care about his feelings, because I understood that it was not fair, because I knew the reason why she pursued him in the first place was because of my actions and her being hurt. And I knew that they really weren't fundamentally going to work. Their values and principles were completely different. So, and, but also I just couldn't physically do it
So it was an
anymore.
act of charity.
No, that was, no, his feelings were part of it, because I said, but yeah,
I was just
her
teasing you, man.
mindset was, you're only, and that's why she was hesitant doing it, because she's saying, you only want me to say that because he's going to stop talking to me. But she also knew that too. So that's why it was, so yeah, I did that. And she told him a little bit of truth. She told him that she did see me a little bit, but it was not obviously the whole picture. So they stopped talking for a bit, and I knew that he was going to reach back out. And when he first started reaching out, she told me about it. And so, yeah, we had that same kind of agreement, like, let me know if he reaches out, please. And so that's what she did the first couple times. But then after,
so
like,
what are you doing? Are you saying that she told you about the Instagram because you already had an agreement to communicate about it?
No, so earlier this year we had that same kind of agreement. Like, she was going to let me know if he was reaching out to her. But then it got to the point where she didn't tell me anymore. And then she was deleting messages that they were sending. And then she ended up seeing him while we were dating. So yes, she did point this out to me. And so that is good. Like you're saying, it is good. But for me, it just reminds me of earlier this year where we had that same agreement. So for me, I think, well, maybe she's just telling me now to kind of get me off her track. Like, I'll be upfront, and I'll show that I'm being transparent. And then there'll be a time where, okay, well, I'll just not say it. And you're not going to think about that. So that's why my self-defense is thinking that way,
So I was
so
gonna
it
say
is
that's a really great story that your defense mechanisms have created to protect you. And it is. I totally get that, because I used to come up with a million stories like, oh yeah, this is just to throw me off. This is just intended to like make me feel better right now so that I can stop asking more questions, so I can stop checking his phone, so I can stop doing whatever, and then I'll let my guard down, and the rug's going to get pulled out from under me. So yes, it's a defense mechanism. And from the way that you're speaking right now, one thing that I'm noticing is I don't know if we talked about this last time about Dr. Joe Dispenza, and how he talks about how when we relive the trauma, we're secreting the same hormones, and then our body becomes addicted to those hormones. So now, even when a situation isn't happening, our response is to imagine that it could happen, because then we get that fix of hormones and then we feel normal again, right? We've become addicted to that feeling. And so we look for ways to have that feeling again, because that feels like normal to our body, because we've been reliving the situation over and over again. The more you tell the story about what happened in January, or what happened in March, or what happened last year, the more your body relives that. It can't tell the difference between you telling the story and you actually living it out. And so the hormones are there. The body's like, yep, I'm getting my fix of hormones. This feels good. This feels like home. This feels normal to me. And so I'm going to keep trying to get that fix of hormones. It's very difficult to come out of that, because it's not like you can take something away, right? It's not like you can take the alcohol away. It's a story in your head that your own defense mechanisms keep telling, and they keep telling you because it's like, I have to remember, otherwise I might let my guard down and get hurt again. And so I have to keep that front and center. And let me tell you, I've even noticed situations. So last week we talked about the book Existential Kink, and she talks about how sometimes these become our kinks. If we pay attention to how we feel when we're triggered, sometimes the same physical sensations are the sensations we have when we're turned on. If your heart is racing, your body temperature rises, there's certain physical sensations that are very similar to when you're turned on, right? That's that's some of the concept behind BDSM, right? People enjoying getting pleasure out of feeling pain. If we can do that with physical pain, we can do the same thing with emotional pain. Find a way to get the emotional pleasure out of the emotional pain. So what I started realizing is, what sensations am I having when I relive certain experiences? So a couple of months ago, Danny was out at Home Depot, and we share our location with each other. So sometimes I check to see if he's on his way home, like for lunch or for dinner. So whatever, I checked his location because he wasn't answering me, and he was at Home Depot, but the pin on the map showed on the like expressway. And I was like, why would he be going to the city? Like, what's in the city that he would need to go in the middle of the day without telling me? And then I remembered, like, years ago, he told me that he had met up with an ex in the city, and hadn't told me at the time. It was like 5-6 years ago. I don't even know how many years ago. And so for whatever reason, that story popped into my head, and I was immediately like, oh my God, he went to the city to meet up with his ex. And it was such a random feeling that first of all, I was like, he's at Home Depot. I see the Home Depot right next to the pin, so it's very clear that he's at Home Depot. But my brain came up with this story, and I could feel the adrenaline from that feeling of, oh my God, he lied to me. And as soon as I noticed it, I was like, you sneaky bastard. Like, that's what it is.
Our ego,
my
not
ego,
me.
my ego, not Danny. My ego was trying to get a fix of adrenaline, of that rush of like excitement of, we're gonna fight. Like, this is something for me to like, I could feel the familiar sensation, and how there was a little bit of weird pleasure in there, where I was like, oh shit, that's what this is. That's what my ego does. It comes up with all these stories to get me this rush of adrenaline, rush of hormones going. And there's this bit of excitement there, because when you think about it, I mean, now we can think about the fights that we used to have. There was excitement, there was passion, there was all sorts of, I mean,
we'd be throwing things at each other and then 10 minutes later fucking. So it was,
Yeah.
it was a lot of intensity.
Yeah. And so there's we get addicted to that. We get addicted to the drama. There's a reason why dramas are like, we go to the movies to watch dramas. We watch TV, we're watching dramas. We're never watching a happy family that just exists in all beauty and joy and grace, right? There's always drama where we enjoy that. That's part of our human experience, is to have the drama. So yes, we're going to constantly look for it, and I think it's important to work on identifying when you're pursuing the drama and it's not really there.
Or even if it is there and you're still pursuing it.
Yeah.
That's why before, when I was asking, do you like feeling angry and jealous? You can just let all that go. You can just forgive her. You can just say, okay, you were hurt. You did something that hurt me in return. I've done things that hurt you. So we can just let this go. You can do that. I know at the moment you don't feel like you can, because you have all those hormones rushing through you. And your mind is telling you,
the ego
no,
is like,
you
nope.
can't. You can't. What the hell is he talking about? You can't forgive. You got to be on high alert. We can't allow this to happen again. And the ultimate reason is why. Because you feel that you're not worthy, and you feel that the evidence is proving I'm not worthy, and you don't want to be faced with that evidence. So her being interested in someone else is proof to you that you're not worthy, right? That's ultimately the fear. But the fact is, whether Lindsay loves you or not, wants to be with you or not, you are worthy. You're a child of God. It doesn't matter who's interested in you or who isn't. None of that is relevant. And I understand that that tends to be a very abstract concept, right? Yes, we're all, but that doesn't change the fact that I feel what I feel right now. Absolutely. And I'm not discounting your feelings at all. But you don't have to stay in those feelings. You can, at the same time, you're logicking all the reasons why you have to police her Instagram. You can say, oh, wait, I'm a child of God, and if she does something wrong, if she cheats, it's her problem. It actually has nothing to do with me. Me cheating on Vanessa multiple times had nothing to do with who she was, or whether she was worthy, or whether I loved her, because I loved her our whole relationship. The cheating was because I had something lacking inside of me. I did not feel worthy. And so I felt like the more women I could sleep with, the worthier I would feel. The catch was, it didn't work. As soon as I orgasmed, I needed another hit. Like literally, there were times like it was like the next day and I needed somebody else, because that's the problem is internal. And until I dealt with it in here, it was going to keep manifesting. So Lindsay's not your problem. Lindsay is not at fault here. You're not responsible for the way Lindsay feels, and she's not responsible for the way you feel. You're responsible for how you feel, and only you can control your own emotions, right? And I know that, again, that sounds like a very abstract concept, but in the moment when you get triggered, if you shut your eyes, I'm a child of God. What can somebody liking something on Instagram do to hurt me? If God is for me, who can be against me? Right? It's really that simple. It takes practice, though, for it actually to calm your body down, for it to change your hormonal profile from the fight or flight panic to relaxation. It's going to feel like you're faking it in the beginning, and your ego is going to tell you you're faking it. This isn't doing anything. Oh, you think breathing makes all this go away? He still cheated on you. He's still trying to get in contact with her. Maybe she's going to cheat again. Your ego is going to say all that stuff. and just continue to practice it. And eventually you will see it gets quicker and quicker, where you're no longer having the PTSD symptoms, where now you're able to handle it. And it's like, oh, and you get to the point where she can laugh at herself. She can laugh at, oh, she checks my location. He's on the expressway. He's going to the city to meet an ex. Oh, you're so silly, ego. Like literally, when I got home and she told me, she was laughing about it because it was like, and that's the point you'll be able to get to. I promise you. If you do the work, you'll get there. I promise you.
It seems so foreign because I feel like if somebody had told me this when I was in the middle of all of my emotions, of all of the pain, of all of the hurt, I would have been like, this is complete bullshit. Like, you can't tell me that one day I'm going to laugh at what I'm experiencing right now. This is painful. This is scary. This is traumatizing. I also went through the PTSD checklist and said, holy shit, I have PTSD. Like that's what I'm experiencing. I'm constantly afraid. I'm constantly thinking about the worst case scenario. I had feelings of depression. I was in a deep depression for a long time. And like I could feel the physical the physical manifestation of my internal state. My health deteriorated as a result of some of this stuff. And so it's very difficult to think, okay, I just have to change my mind. And really, that's one of the things my best friend told us. Carla was saying that the message she received for us was the miracle will be them changing their minds.
Because it's all about consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Your consciousness creates the whole reality around you. And so if you change your mind, you change your consciousness,
you change your reality.
Yeah. And that's really what the word is. The word in the Bible is consciousness and what was it? It's two things put together. It's not just word. It's oh God, I forgot now. Is it intention? It's intention. I'll get back to you on that one. I'm sorry.
I loved what you guys are talking about because I Friday night and then Saturday morning I went to a workshop, and so it was about just your identity in Christ. And so I went there like with a handful of my friends, and so it was really great. And just some of the things actually like we talked about were the things that you were mentioning, just being in the present, and just some of the things that I wrote down that kind of clicked with our situation was just stepping into the discomfort. And now I'm kind of at the point where I'm actually celebrating like the triggers, because it's like, oh, finally, like now this is like something that's bothering me. Let's talk about it. Let's go through it. And it's just being vulnerable. Nothing really works out unless you're open and you're vulnerable. And so some of the things I just wrote down were this woman, Lisa, she was teaching actually the workshop, and she was wonderful. So she gave me a blessing and just prayed over me throughout the whole night. And so, yeah, some of the things I wrote down were some things are right in front of us, but sometimes we just can't see. So I've kind of asking for the prayer of like, ask God just for you to have sight. And so no past, no future, only present and only now, because that's really like 5 seconds ago, that's like the past. And I just think there's so much importance of being in the present and just do not live in memory. It's our nature to use our memories to protect ourselves, just like you guys were saying, from the future. And that's why I've been so understanding with Nicholas, and because I understand he's coming from just a place of hurt and anger. And I've been trying so hard just to be patient, and it's been really hard, and I haven't said like all the right things when we've gotten into arguments or disagreements or whatever. But yeah,
I used to do that. I used to litigate everything Vanessa would say. She was trying to be patient with me, trying to be compassionate with me, and I would litigate everything she said to keep because I was in the logical left brain, right? And Nicholas, it's a thing that men tend more towards. So sometimes it's easier for women to flow in compassion and forgiveness and grace than it is for men, because first of all, we're kind of shamed for it in modern society. It's starting to change, right? We're starting to see a little bit of a shift in that, but certainly I grew up in an atmosphere where I was called a pussy for crying or for expressing emotion or being vulnerable. So, I mean, most of us have had that experience. Most men have had that experience. And so you don't have to get down on yourself about it. It's just part of the programming that we're letting go of. I actually, Lindsay, I want to ask you a question. When you decided to start pursuing the relationship with this other guy, how were you feeling in your relationship with Nicholas?
Are you talking about January or from the beginning or
Whenever.
in June?
Well, in January,
Nicholas, you're obsessed with the timeline. Time doesn't exist.
Well, in January, I was basically just at my wit's end with everything. I felt like I had become so distant, and him as well. I felt hopeless. I was just so upset and angry because a lot of things that I would think about were just like why isn't Nicholas doing this? You know, like why isn't he, like, I don't feel needed, I don't feel wanted, and I don't feel loved. And I, at that point in January, I just had like distanced myself since June of 2020. And so yeah, I just didn't feel like he truly was into me. Like sometimes like there were moments where like it was great, and but it wasn't always like that. And there were some like just other things mixed in there throughout that whole time, along like with the cheating. I mean, well, as you guys know, like I would wake up and he was like already playing video games, and it's like we didn't have a lot of like moments I feel were kind of stolen from the length of time we were like with each other. And so that for me, that really bothered me. And yeah, just I didn't feel loved, I didn't feel needed, I didn't feel like he cared.
You didn't feel like he was really present in the relationship. It doesn't sound like you had much of a relationship going on at that moment.
Yeah. And he would just, one of the things, like he would just tell me to go out like with one of my good guy friends, and just pushing me, like, because I was living here for a period of time, and it just, he was literally pushing me away, and it just felt like that since June to January.
Now, Nicholas, how does it feel for you in this moment? How are you feeling right now hearing these things that she's saying? No story, just feelings.
Yeah. Well, one time, I would sad. I'd say sad, disappointed in myself, because I remember those times. She'd be like, "Why? Come lay down." And I'm like, after a match." I was already playing for like a half hour, just dopamine and whatever. So yeah. So it's just sad because I know what it led to. And just remembering my mindset of myself I'm never going to get out of this addiction. This is so incredibly shameful and disgusting. And and especially after the first time I cheated
even
on her, it
that,
was terrible.
when you use words like that, you're judging yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You did it because you had fear, you had pain that you were trying to medicate. It's okay to try to medicate pain. You chose, I did too. I chose ways that ended up hurting me and hurting Vanessa. But I was trying to medicate my pain, and that's understandable. And God has compassion for that. God has grace for that, even if Lindsay can at every moment. And it sounds like she's really trying. But there were moments when Vanessa couldn't. And it's okay. She's human too. But in every moment, God has compassion for you. God has grace for you and forgiveness for you, even when you won't forgive yourself. And that's what it is. It's not that you can't forgive yourself. You won't forgive yourself. And that's where you need to work on, is coming to the place that you can choose to forgive myself. I choose to let it go. I could still beat myself up over all the terrible things that I did. But what good is that? What good is that going forward? I'm just stuck in the past in those things that I did instead of the potential. And here we are now, where we have this beautiful relationship. And it's joy and happiness every day. And Vanessa will tell you she's thankful for all those fucked up things I did to her, because they got us here. Those triggers brought all that stuff out. I didn't know I was a sex addict. I just thought, this is the lifestyle I live. I go out, I party, I get laid. I didn't know. It took our relationship, like, degenerating to almost being completely destroyed. It took hitting rock bottom for me to come to the realization that I was addicted. And
Yeah, like
to be
you,
able to work on that.
like you just saying, my mindset was to go out, party, and get laid. And then for me, I'm getting triggered as hell from you saying that. And I see Vanessa's face, and she's just smiling. She's like, ah. Yeah, it's just he's just making a good point. It's like, what?
Yeah.
um,
That's part of the
Danny's
experience.
triggering me. Cancel him.
Well,
That's
Mute.
my job.
that goes to show where and that's the thing, right? Like Lindsay was saying before, I'm grateful for the triggers. I'm excited for the triggers. There was a point where I would say the same thing. I'm so excited for the triggers because the triggers are pointing us to the places where we are not healed yet,
Yes.
to the places where we're blocking out love. That's really what the triggers are, right? You're triggered right now. What is it about that? What is it about him saying that he thought his life was going out, partying, and getting laid? What about that is triggering you? Because now when you look at that, it's gonna show you, what is there a fear there? Is there a resentment there? Is there, I kind of wish I could do that too? Like, what is behind those feelings? That's what's meant to be looked at. And it's very easy. The ego does a fantastic job of protecting us from ourselves, and so it very quickly puts it onto somebody else, right? Danny triggered me, Lindsay triggered me, the guy that Lindsay was talking to triggered me, the guy across the street triggered me, the guy that cut me off triggered me. It's very easy to put it on everybody else because now you don't have to look at yourself. Now you're just like, well, if that person did their work, then they wouldn't be triggering me. And that's where I was at for years. Like, if Danny just did his work and fixed his sex addiction, it would all be fine. Our relationship would be fine. But it wouldn't have been. There would have still been, like, everything would have triggered me. Him being friendly to a waitress would have triggered me at that point. And so I needed to do my internal work to recognize that I deserved love, that I deserved compassion, that I deserved care. And once I was able to give that to myself, I could model that to Danny. Where Danny now is, there are days where I've had a long day and he's had a long day, and he'll still come home and do the dishes, you know. And then like I'm working on releasing the guilt for that, because there are moments where I'm like, well, he was out working all day and he's going to come home and help me do the dishes, you know. But that's part of the internal work that we're both doing, where I have to learn to be okay with receiving help, that if he wants to help me, it's because he loves me and I deserve that love, because there are days where I'm exhausted and I help him too.
Mm-hmm.
There are days where I go help him at work and we're both painting, and then we come home and I still have stuff to do at home, you know. So it's okay. Like it's our work is to deprogram all of the stories, all of the things that we've been taught are the way we're supposed to behave. If somebody cheats on you, then they've wronged you and now you have to put up a wall, right? That's kind of how we operate in society. I mean, we have a prison system, right? Somebody does something wrong, we punish them. That's the way. And if we don't punish them, then we're not teaching them a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that with children, we do that with adults, we do that with addicts, we do that with people who are suffering. There are people out there that are homeless and we blame them. Oh, let's punish them because they're homeless. They must have done something.
They're lazy. They don't want to get a job, so they're
Yeah,
homeless.
so it's very easy to judge people because they don't think the way that we do. This whole thing right now with COVID, the vaccinated are hoping that the unvaccinated die. The unvaccinated hope that the vaccinated die, right? And we're losing that sense of humanity because it's like, oh, this person thinks differently from me. One of the things that I recently told somebody was, it's very easy to be Jesus to somebody that agrees with you. It's very easy to be like Jesus when it comes to someone that thinks like you, acts like you, does what you want them to do. The real work of Jesus is to be that with somebody that thinks completely the opposite of you, somebody who is hurting you, somebody who is acting out in pain. That's the real work, because it's very easy to be somebody who is nice to you. When somebody hurts you, that's the work. How do you have compassion for somebody that has hurt you? When a child is throwing a temper tantrum and they hit you in the face or they kick you, yeah, the instinct is to be angry, right? Like, you just hit me in the face, what am I gonna do? But it's a child, so you remember to have compassion. Okay, they're having a temper tantrum, they're having a hard time expressing their emotions, so we center ourselves and we say, okay, what do you need? It's the same thing with adults. We kind of tend to outgrow that phase and think, oh, as adults you shouldn't throw temper tantrums, but we're all throwing temper tantrums. We're all out in the world throwing temper tantrums at every turn. You know, some of the stuff that you've said to us, Nicholas, through your pain has sounded like a temper tantrum too. And it's understandable, because when we're in pain, that's what we do. And it's okay.
With what she's saying actually brings up a really great point, because it literally is a temper tantrum from a former version of yourself. And I don't know, that's part of your work is to figure out where that trauma traces back to. Where did that PTSD? Who told you as a child that, or what age were you when you were told you're not worthy? And it didn't have to be that your mother was beating you or your father was beating you and saying you're not worthy. It could have just been their behaviors that gave you the impression that you weren't worthy. But somewhere in your childhood, you picked up this belief. I picked up that belief because my mom was my mom went through a period when she was like divorcing my dad where she was I viewed it as selfish. I viewed it as her not being interested in having kids, and I felt unloved. The truth of the matter was the woman needed a break. You know, she was dealing with me and my brother, she was dealing with my dad, and their relationship was breaking up. And so she got a second job and she would go out with her friends sometimes. And I understand now as a parent, she needed some adult time. She needed some time to herself. I interpreted it as, because I was young, I interpreted it as she doesn't love me. She doesn't love me enough. And then that story, I kept repeating that story over and over again. And then when I got married the first time, or when I started dating my first wife, her parents said, he's not good enough for you. And my mom said, you're not good enough for her, but you better try and do everything you can to hold on to her, because you're never going to get anything better than that. And so here we go again, the story repeating itself. You're not worthy. You're not worthy. My first wife, we just did not have the we were young. We were 16 when we got together. We just didn't have the emotional intelligence to make our relationship work. And I started cheating on her. And I cheated for most of my marriage with her. And that's where my addiction really came into play, because it was like I needed to feel worthy. And once I would have an affair, and then once the person got sick of being in an affair and would leave me, I would have to find somebody else. And then it just the addiction escalated and escalated to the point where I was like, there was a time right before I met her where I was literally fucking somebody, like, definitely multiple times a week, a different person. I probably had 100 partners in 1 year, just because it was like the addiction just went into like this full, and I'm not bragging, it's like
It was like spiraling out of control.
I was spiraling like crazy. And then I met Vanessa, and we didn't end up really starting a relationship until like 2 years later, after my son was born. But whew, that was a
like
lot.
a purge.
That was a lot. That was a little mini purge there. Yeah.
But
I
all
lost
of
my
that,
train of
but
thought.
all of that
Came
stemming
back
from
from me misinterpreting my mother's actions. So it doesn't even have to be that you had an abusive parent. It could just be that in your childlike brain, you misinterpreted something. That's what your work is, to trace that back, figure out where that belief came from, and then speak to that. Speak to your 5-year-old self, speak to your 7-year-old, whatever it is. Mom loved you. She just needed a break. She just needed to go and have some time with her friends, because dad was stressing her out. They were going through a divorce. I understand you didn't get that back then, but now we can understand that. And she did love us. And so we can let this go. We can forgive her. We can forgive ourselves for the things we did with that false belief. You have a false belief, Nicholas, that you're not worthy. So forgive yourself. You were given bad information, whether it was by someone else or by your ego. You were given bad information and then started making decisions based on that information. So forgive yourself.
Yeah, I actually had this conversation just last night with you.
No.
Maybe. I was sharing with him like my 5 pages of notes from this workshop I went to, and I literally read every single word of it, because it really resonated with me and just what we're going through. And so I was just reading the things off to him that this Lisa was sharing with us. And so, but I was basically just saying that, like, it doesn't matter where we've been, and it doesn't matter all the mistakes we've made and the people we've hurt. Like, of course it does matter, but we need to learn from the past, and it shouldn't carry with us into the present. And I was just kind of telling him that, God forgives you. He forgives me. He forgives you. He loves both of us so much, more than we can ever even imagine. And, we have to, once we really know what God believes of us and thinks of us, that's, for me, like, I think that's key. And I was just kind of going into it last night and just telling him that, God knows you're worthy. You are loved. He needs you. He wants to have a relationship with you. And no matter what sins have been present in your life and anything like you've been a part of, like, it doesn't matter, because he loves you regardless, and he forgives every single one of us. And so I was just kind of going into that. And there was an exercise that actually really helped me Friday night. One of my friends presented this, and it was called the identity onion. And so that was really kind of powerful. It's very simple. You just basically talk about like the 3 layers of the onion. So the first is how what people see you as. So what do you identify as? So I wrote down like daughter, niece, or aunt, sorry. And then the second layer was how the world basically views you. And so I wrote down regarding to friends and family. So I just wrote down, you're kind, or I am kind, I am strong, etc. And then the third layer was like the inner layer. And so basically you wrote down just like on an index card what you think of yourself. And so I wrote down negative things, and that's what people tend to do. And so, you know, some of the things I wrote down were, and I was telling him this last night, that I feel unworthy, I feel unwanted, I feel like a failure. But after the end of it, you rip that up and you just throw it away. And then you rewrite down what God sees you as, or how God sees you. And I wrote down, I am worthy, you know, and I'm not a failure. But yeah, I recommended maybe like doing that activity like with him, just as an exercise. And I think for me personally, it was very powerful. And I think once we harness just the realization that what God actually thinks about us, and how we're given more than one chance, like this is not it, you know, there's more than a second chance.
Absolutely. That's original sin. That's the spoiler alert, right? Every human being on this planet feels unworthy. That's original sin, shame. We feel like we're separated from God, but we're not.
One of the things that I don't remember when this happened, but we were talking about God forgiving Danny, and Danny was like, yeah, but I can't forgive myself. And I was like, oh, right, because you know better than God, right? And then that was like oh, right, like God can forgive me, but I'm gonna hold a grudge because I know better than God. Like, I'm not gonna trust God enough. He can forgive me because he's just so trusting and benevolent, but I know the truth, and I know to hold that grudge and make sure that I keep myself under control. And that's the trick of the ego, right? The ego is like, I need to make sure that I protect, I need to make sure that I punish. That's how we've been taught. And everything in nature is a reflection of our internal state as well, right? And we can look to nature to see how nature exists, and we go through cycles. It's winter time, it's time to release, right? The trees let go of this past year, and they don't die because of it. They simply let go, and they trust that in the spring things will be reborn. So this is a perfect time for you to release all of the things that don't serve you. And I know that it's very hard because we become very attached to the stories, we become very attached to the emotions, to the potential what ifs. It's very addicting. I was there. So Danny had his addiction, I had my addiction. I was totally addicted to the stories. I was addicted to my stories about my health. I was addicted to my stories about my relationships. Oh, I attract the same type of guy. Nobody's ever going to choose me, nobody's ever going to want to be with me. I had a million stories myself, and those stories were attracting the reality. Because the truth is, once I ended those stories, once I decided to end those stories, my relationship shifted. It completely changed because I made the decision to change my perspective. And I didn't need Danny to change in that moment. I mean, he could have made the choice to continue in his addictions, and at that point I was like, yeah, but my reality has shifted. This is not what I don't deserve this behavior anymore. So I'm ready to move on from it. And I shifted that perspective to the point where it shifted our relationship.
You found your sovereignty.
I did.
And Nick, you talked before about having all the prepper stuff, and I know that you care about sovereignty. But sovereignty means you cannot be moved by somebody liking her Instagram or following her Instagram, right? You're able to stay centered. And it doesn't mean that you don't have emotions. It doesn't mean that you never get upset, never get angry. but you're able to control how the emotions come out of you. So instead of flying off the handle or crying and wanting to commit suicide, right? Talking about two different ends of the spectrum, right? From a deflated to an aggressive. Instead of reacting that way, you can take that deep breath, close your eyes. That's when you found that sovereignty. When you have confidence in yourself and you understand, and it's a lifelong process. So please don't think that I'm saying that by next week, the next time we talk, I want to hear that you have sovereignty.
No,
this is a lifelong process.
And I think it's very important to recognize that the emotions are part of our experience as well, right? So when that happens, you can come forward and say, this scares me. I feel hurt right now. This guy is following you. That's scary. I'm afraid right now, and I'm coming to you with vulnerability to share that I feel scared that you may potentially rekindle a relationship with this guy. And I don't want that because I want to be in a relationship with you. That's the truth of it, right? If you suppress that feeling, it's going to come out in anger. It's going to come out in passive aggressive behavior, passive aggressive words. It's
even if you didn't say anything that time, right? Like he follows her and maybe you don't say anything, but you feel it and you don't express it. And then 2 weeks from now, he likes a post or he comments on one of her posts. Now you fly up the handle. I didn't say anything, right? Like it could come out like that.
So it's important to honor those feelings, to honor exactly what you're feeling. And like I told you this last time, I really do appreciate your vulnerability. You're willing to come up on YouTube and say, hey, this is what's happening in my life and this is what I'm feeling right now. And that's huge. A lot of people are not that vulnerable. We were not that vulnerable. I mean, we ended up on national TV talking about our addictions and our pain and all of the horrible things that we went through. And that is healing in and of itself, right? Yeah. And so you being vulnerable this way, you can totally be vulnerable in small ways. You can totally be vulnerable with Lindsay and say, hey, this is what I'm really scared of right now. And I've done that with Danny. And let me tell you, in the beginning of our relationship, I was the opposite of vulnerable. If I was hurt, I would shut it down. I'm not going to show him that I'm hurt. I'm not going to let him have that power over me. And then I would get drunk and lash out at him and pick a fight and escalate things, because everything that I had been suppressing would come out when I was drinking, and then it would turn into chaos. So there is power in being vulnerable. Now I can tell him, yeah, I checked your location and freaked out for a second because I was like, oh my God, he went to the city to meet up with his ex, and then feel the insanity, like the adrenaline, and I was like, oh my God, that's it. This is the addiction, and it's coming out, and I can see it, and now I can laugh at it, and I can, okay, thank you, ego, for trying to protect me. He's at Home Depot. There's nothing to be afraid of. And if he were meeting up with his ex, we can have a conversation about it. There's no need to panic. Calm down, ego. It's okay. I'm running the show, but thank you for protecting me. And you can give your ego a job. You can allow your ego to come out and play. It's important to integrate, right? There's a lot of talk in spiritual circles of ego death. I don't believe in ego death. Our ego is there to protect us, right? It's going to stop us from walking into traffic. It's going to protect us in intense scenarios. It's necessary. Our ego does guide us, right? The triggers presented by our ego are what lead us to healing. So yes, thank you, ego. And when the ego jumps in and wants to protect us, we can thank it. Thank you, ego. You're doing an excellent job trying to protect me. Now that you've brought up the red flag, I'm going to take a look at it and I'll handle it. Thank you for ringing the doorbell and telling me that something's up. And that's it. Then you don't suppress the ego, but it also doesn't control the whole operation.
Mm-hmm.
One main thing I wanted to ask you, I guess, is, so when you and Danny were together and you found out he was unfaithful, how did you get to the point where
I was a cheating whore?
No. I'm not gonna do that. But when that happened, how did you find clarity in your decision to either like? Because for me, I'm not sure if maybe my ego is telling me these things, and I'm purposely not wanting to get past them because maybe deep down I don't want to be here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be with her anymore. Maybe this was the final straw and I literally can't move past it. Like, I'm not sure at what point it's the ego telling me a story and it's just triggers that are really affecting my thoughts and all this other stuff, and then like potential PTSD and all that stuff, and then whether or not it's legitimately like I need to separate. I'm not sure if where that's my biggest that's the
Yeah.
root of it, really. My confusion is
You're
because I'm just
asking.
not sure. I can't really differentiate it. Like, for you, how were you able to differentiate those kind of like, okay, this was just the ego, or this is genuinely how I'm feeling? Like, how did you really
Yeah.
find clarity in that?
She's the perfect one to ask this question. She's a master at this.
I'm still learning. I'm still learning at times. It's a lifelong struggle, like Danny said. I actually went away for a couple of days and took some time for self-healing. And I was gone, what, 3 days, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
was
we
yeah,
can.
I was gone like a weekend, 3 days. And my instinct when going away and talking to this person was to talk about all the things Danny was doing, all the ways in which
She
he,
was gonna tell stories.
yeah, I wanted to tell stories. He's doing this, he's doing that, he's doing this, he's doing that. And my friend and mentor was like, okay, what about you? What about you? What do you feel? What do you want? What do you need? And she kept bringing it back to me. What about you? What is it that you're feeling? What is it that your intuition is telling you? And it's very difficult to quiet the mind so that your intuition can come through. I would suggest there's journaling, of course. You find a healer, find somebody that you can talk to vulnerably, even alone, and really get to kind of like the questions that we're asking you about what you're feeling. Because it's very easy to, like I said, the ego does a really good job of pointing to where everybody else was wrong. If they hadn't done this, I wouldn't be in this situation. Oh, but you would have. It doesn't matter who you're with. It doesn't matter who you date. You're going to attract the same situation over and over until you heal the issues that are inside of self-worth, of what you deserve, right? And until you realize that you deserve a happy, healthy relationship, you're going to continue attracting situations in which they confirm to you that you're not worthy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And for me, it was a no-brainer. I knew that I loved Danny. I knew that, from the moment, I don't know, we had been together for years at that point, and I knew that I wanted to be with him. I feel like when we talk about it now, the first time we met, we kind of knew there was something special there. And maybe that's just us romanticizing it now because we feel the way that we do. But I feel like I I check in with my intuition a lot. And even, like, for example, we were talking about this ice bath, and sometimes I have this story in my head. My ego tells me that I can't hear my intuition, that I have a hard time hearing my intuition. And Danny and my best friend laugh at me because they're like, "What are you talking about? You hear your intuition all the time." But I doubt it a lot. And so the work is in checking back in with yourself. And for me, I have to do it every day. Like with this ice bath, I made the decision on Tuesday. Every day after Tuesday, I woke up and asked myself first thing in the morning, are you doing the ice bath? And the answer was always yes. So sometimes you just have to catch your intuition off guard and believe it. Believe it, because it's there. It'll answer right away. But the ego will then come in with the story and be like, yeah, but maybe you shouldn't. But yeah, what about this? What about that? There were plenty of times that I felt my intuition telling me, yes, this is the man that you're meant to be with. You love him. This is it. But my ego would come in and pipe in and be like, are you really going to be with a guy that cheated on you? That lied to you? He lied to you so many times. And what? All of a sudden he's going to stop lying to you? You really believe that? And it's maddening, right?
In your face, ego.
Yeah. It's maddening because your intuition tells you one thing and then your ego's in here like ringing all the bells and saying no, you can't do this, you can't trust, you can't be vulnerable. And that's the thing about love, right? About being in relationship, that you run the risk of getting hurt. That's
The more you're at risk of being hurt, the more powerfully you feel the love. That's the fact of the matter. One other thing that I would add to what she said was that if it's fear, it's not your intuition. If it comes from a place of fear, if you feel stressed and anxious, that's not your intuition speaking to you. Your intuition speaks to you with love, and you'll feel it. You'll feel
calmness.
It may not be the calmness. That's really what it is. It's the calm confidence that we talked about with Caesar Milan, right? That's sovereignty. Your soul is sovereign. Your soul always feels sovereignty. Your soul does not feel insecurity or shame. It can't, because your soul is how you connect to God. It's the piece of God put inside your body, right? It doesn't feel those negative feelings. So with your intuition, messages from your soul, it's always calm, it's confident, you just recognize the difference. The anxiety comes from your ego. So that's not intuition. So
it's like I was saying about the ice bath. I had the I was talking to a friend about the ice bath, and I said, like, we were deciding whether we were going to go this Saturday. And once Danny said yes, I was like, okay, yes, I'm going on Saturday. But I've been there and never had the thought like, oh yeah, I'm going to do the ice bath. It was almost like a thought that immediately came into my head. Oh, I'm doing the ice bath. And then I was like, then my ego comes in and is like, you're doing the ice bath? Are you crazy? You can't do the ice bath. That's cold. You're trying to warm up your womb. Like, all of these fears in my head are that's my ego. And then I was like, all right, let me just leave it. I'll revisit the idea tomorrow. The next morning I woke up and asked myself the same question. Are you doing the ice bath? And it was like, yep, you're doing the ice bath. And I was like, oh, really? I'm doing the ice bath? Are you sure? And then, my ego pipes in and starts telling me the stories like, oh, are you sure? You've done all this work, all these years trying to stay warm, wearing the socks, and, making sure that you cover up all the time, and you're going to go jump into a tub of ice. And then my intuition was like, yeah, you're going to do that. And it's, and that's, it's important to exercise your intuition, right? And you can do it in small ways. What do I want to drink today? What do I want to drink first thing in the morning? What does your intuition tell you? And little things like that, where you start giving your intuition a voice and you start paying attention to it in small ways that aren't going to be life-changing. Like I said, like, what do I want to drink right now? What's the first thing that pops into your head? Follow that. The more you start doing that, the more you start connecting to your intuition, to the point where it's second nature. It just goes, and then you can feel the difference, like Danny said, because then I could tell when my ego was bringing in the fear and like, oh my God, now you're going to set yourself back. All of this work you've been doing, this isn't going to be healthy for you. You're going to put yourself at risk. What are you doing? You're going to get in trouble. Like, who's checking up on me to make sure that I'm keeping my body warm, right? Like, all of these things, I could tell the difference where they were rooted in fear and where my intuition was like, yes, you're going to do the ice bath.
I think also your intuition doesn't argue with your ego, right? Your intuition has the confidence because it's literally always connected to God. It's always receiving love from God, right? So it has the confidence that, okay, ego, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm telling you, this is what I think you should do. I think you should forgive. Even if you don't stay with Lindsay, you have to forgive because it's going to be better for you. And then the ego comes in and wants to shout over it. I believe that's what the Bible calls the still small voice. That's your soul. It's God, the Holy Spirit, however you want to term it. It's messages from God trying to come through, and it's a still small voice. You have to listen. You have to silence the ego and listen to really be able to tune into it.
All right, yeah, that was definitely a great response and a great answer. So thank you guys for that. It gave me a lot more
I
clarity.
passed.
Yes, yes, very much so. So thank you for that, because yeah, that's something that I've still been obviously struggling with, is just kind of differentiating that, and I think that's why I have been confused, because it's just I'm not
Mhm.
sure what I'm listening to and what's the right path, which is why I'm kind of indecisive, and I'm kind of stagnant, because like I think maybe I should just give us some space, but then I'm just not sure if how I'm going to feel in that time frame, because I'm not coping. I'm not using any sexual coping mechanisms,
Mhm.
So like, how am I going to fill that void? And I know that I can get a lot more emotional in that time frame when I'm not finishing or doing anything like that. I have a lot more pent up kind of emotions, so like that kind of scares me. So it's like, yeah, so yeah, it's definitely been.
Well, you just have to learn how to like slow release those emotions, release them in a calm, confident way, right? Just journal it. That's probably the best way where there's no chance of you hurting anyone else, right? And then when you feel like you can trust yourself, share with Lindsay or whoever, and
Exercise, qigong, yoga, those are great ways to move the energy, and you're literally just moving the energy. Dance, you don't even have to do anything like structured. You can put on some music and just dance, move your body, get the energy flowing, get it like it is literally, emotions are energy and motion, right?
Yeah.
It's stuff that's in your body, and sometimes it's stagnated. Go to a drum circle or drum, like make
jump to
music,
yourself.
drum to yourself, draw. There are so many
What
ways.
is your creative outlet? Do you have any like hobbies, or do you
Um,
draw? Do you do anything creative like that? Music?
I was doing some of that Rocksmith video game where you can learn the guitar. I did that
Mhm.
for a little bit, but I want to get back into that. Um, Doing like the landscaping, gardening kind of thing was pretty good for me.
Yeah, getting your
Um,
hands in the
That's great.
earth.
Doing
Yeah.
the content creation has is way more fulfilling than just sitting here doing nothing. I feel like I'm actually making maybe a small difference in somebody's life, or to inspire somebody in some way.
Yeah.
Dancing, that's something I haven't done in a while, but I've totally been in my bathroom looking at myself in the mirror with headphones on, just jamming to a bunch of different stuff, and I know that it's good. Probably have a
Yeah.
lot of pent up just energy that I can just dance out,
Yeah.
and just going for a walk every day. I haven't been doing that, but that's definitely something that would help me. But just a matter of doing it, and just it's yeah,
Do it.
it's
And it
do it.
doesn't have to be a long, you can dedicate 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, pick one song, dance to that one song. Because sometimes we think, oh, okay, I have to change everything today, right? Today I have to journal, I have to dance, I have to do yoga, I have to take a walk, I have to ground, I have to this, I have to that. And that feels overwhelming.
And then you don't do it, and then you judge yourself for not doing it.
So if today I pick one song, go into the bathroom and dance my heart out, then you've accomplished something. Check, I did it. I got some energy out, and that starts to build momentum. Then tomorrow you're like, all right, yeah, it felt good to dance that one song. Let me just do that, and or another one. Or next thing you know, it's like half an hour later, and you've moved, you've gotten all of this movement, moved all of this energy, and scream. You can actually go somewhere, go out into the woods and just scream as loud as you can and get some of that energy out. Like, there are so many
Get a
ways.
dog. A dog will help you burn energy.
There are many ways, whatever resonates with you, whatever helps you relieve some of that stress. And yeah, I mean, I think vulnerability is so powerful. um Vulnerability gives other people permission as well to to feel what they feel. And we are in a society where we are kept together, where we present all these beautiful things on Facebook, on social media. We're all perfect, right? On social media, we all have the best lives ever. And we are not as vulnerable as we can be. And the more we're vulnerable, the more we put out into the world, hey, I'm hurting right now, I'm having a really rough time, the more people connect to that. People are like, yeah, me too. Like, then you start realizing everybody's going through it, and then you feel less alone. There's what is it, the violet light meditation? Or no, there's a meditation in existential kink, and it talks about basically connecting to all of the people in the world who are going through the same thing. So you're experiencing betrayal, right? And it feels very lonely when you experience betrayal, when you've been hurt and you're like, I'm the only one that's going through this pain right now, especially in your partnership, right? It feels like, oh, my partner doesn't know what I'm going through. I just feel betrayed and lost and alone, and I want to run away because nobody else in the world understands what I'm going through. Take a minute to sit and um imagine all of the people in the world that feel betrayal. And maybe it's 5 people, maybe it's 10 people, maybe it's thousands of people in the world feeling betrayal. And make the conscious decision to pull in all of that betrayal energy. Say, all right, I'm connecting to all of the betrayal that exists on the planet, and I'm going to send healing light to that betrayal, not just in me, but in everybody on the planet. And it's a way to connect with everybody on the planet, because the truth is everybody on the planet has experienced betrayal at some point or another. But it also helps you it helps you realize that you're not alone and you have a purpose, right? You're sending out this healing to others who could potentially be experiencing the same thing that you're experiencing. And when you heal yourself, you heal others as well, right? When you heal when somebody else is healing out there, that gets fed into the collective consciousness and we all heal. So that gives you a purpose, right? I'm going to sit and do this healing meditation to send healing energy to all of those out there that are hurting from betrayal. And I'm sending them love, I'm sending them healing, and you're getting that back as well. And you're connecting to this greater consciousness, um this greater community.
It's about being of service. It's not all about you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So being of service, and having a vision for that service. My people perish for lack of vision. So if you can have some sort of vision of, like you said before, you put it on YouTube because you're hoping it might touch somebody, who's going through something similar. And that's exactly why we started doing our podcast. And here we are sharing our healing story with you, and you're sharing your healing story with other people. And that's how we heal the world. First, by healing ourselves.
And it's beautiful then when you think about the fact that, holy shit, I went through this for a reason. I'm not just going through this because I deserve punishment, because I did something evil and it's coming back to bite me in the ass. I am living this experience because this experience could potentially help somebody else out there. I'm living this experience because I have the vulnerability to share it with the world. And potentially, if I'm this vulnerable with what I'm going through, perhaps this will give somebody else the courage to go through it. And that's a beautiful thing. So thank you for your service. Thank you for going through the pain that you are experiencing in this moment so that you can be vulnerable and allow others to see that they're not alone, and that we're all going through it to some degree.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
That's
Yeah,
why
and
I
then
keep her around.
yeah. And when you were talking earlier about the intuition versus the ego, I guess, like one of the first things that came to my mind the day after I found out she had cheated was, well, look what you did last year multiple times, and she was still there for you. And then look at how you confessed your darkest sexual secret to her, who was the first person in your entire life that you had spoken that to, and she was still there for you. And then like I had those two main kind of things in my mind when I went over to her house the next day after finding out. And I wasn't planning on seeing her ever again. And so I guess I can see that that's kind of instinct, like just to see like, look how much like I've put her through and how much she stayed around. And so I was kind of giving her that. I even told her that that day was, I'm here because of all that stuff that had happened. And I know that you stood there.
Put yourself. I want to see you guys on the big. Make your screen the bigger one.
Okay.
So we can see you.
Good. I don't want to see you anymore. There you go.
Because I'm making an observation of how you guys are sitting together. The body language.
It's just because of the headphone cord.
Bullshit. The body language does not speak. It doesn't. I don't see tension here. Do you see tension?
No, you know, it was funny when we first started, I actually had the thought where you were saying how difficult things have been lately, and you guys seem to be with such ease in this space. At least your body language spoke that.
Yeah, which is important because your body language reflects your subconscious.
More than your ego might be telling you yes, and I know this because this used to happen with us too, where we would go out and it was comfortable. There was ease in there despite the turmoil that was going on. Despite the turmoil that was going on within.
Put it back.
Yeah. And so
I want you to look at that. I want you to watch yourselves.
Yeah, because
I know you're having a hard time
with
it, which is why I want you to keep it there. I want you to look at that.
But the way you guys came in, I was really surprised because from how you've expressed the trouble you're going through right now, and even when you came on and you were saying I'm having a really hard time, that I couldn't see that in your body language. In your body language, it looked like you guys were like cool and you were telling her like, oh yeah, I'm gonna introduce us and you're gonna say this, and there was a little bit of laughter, and I was like, okay, does not look like what I thought it would look like.
What we were expecting from the way you've described it. Yeah.
It might have been the kratom that I drank.
It's possible. It's possible, but let me tell you, even if you if it wasn't that case, even if you had drank the kratom, it wouldn't have changed anything.
Right.
So that's just an observation. Maybe. That doesn't mean that you have to make a decision based on our observation. I understand that, you know, our defense mechanisms are always going to try to protect us, and that's totally understandable. Like I said, I know the trauma of going through the betrayal, and in that moment of feeling like, no, I can't be at ease with this person who's betrayed me. That's wrong. You know, what kind of person would I be if I can't even protect myself? So I completely understand it. We just wanted to throw that out for you to be aware of that and to notice that, because you're talking about connecting with your intuition, and your intuition telling you, right? Like that calm, quiet voice saying, yeah, well, she's held space for you. She's been patient with you through your issues. Can you be patient? And if your intuition is asking you to do that, I would suggest listening to your intuition. And yeah, it's okay to protect yourself, and you're not going to lose the defense mechanisms from one day to the next. But you can slowly, once you start giving your intuition more of a voice and more of a place in your decision making, then those defense mechanisms slowly start to lose their power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to share something that we experienced during a mushroom ceremony that I think, and actually, Nicholas, you may have already heard this story, but I'm going to share it again anyway. And, you know, I think you could benefit from hearing this story again if you have. And then I'm going to follow up with a guaranteed way to make sure Lindsay will never cheat on you again. Well, I'm trying to remember if it was our first or second mushroom ceremony ever. I believe it was the first. And Mother Ayahuasca, a very the feminine aspect of God is how I would describe it, came through Vanessa. She literally turned to me, and a voice that was not hers came out of her mouth and told me, when are you going to stop disrespecting the feminine? When are you going to stop taking and taking and taking? When are you going to give back? And that experience really changed my life, because I realized that that's exactly what I was doing. Yeah, I was addicted. Yeah, I was in pain. I was acting out that pain. But my actions were selfish, self-centered, childlike. It was, in and of itself, me cheating was a temper tantrum. And it was at that moment that I received a new vision for my life of serving the feminine, of protecting the feminine, of holding space for the feminine, for respecting the feminine, respecting my wife. Now, she wasn't my wife then, but respecting her and loving her, and the way the Bible says, the way Christ loves the church, right? It's being of service. It's being a protector. It's embodying the sacred masculine principle. And if you do that, if you can achieve that, or I won't even say achieve that, because I don't think it's something that's ever achieved. I think it's a practice that you every day you practice it, right? It's not a destination you will ever arrive at least not on this plane. But if you can embody that and commit to it and try your best to embody that, then you two can stay in this relationship as long as you want to be in this relationship, as long as it serves you. Because committing to each other, to serve each other, for the feminine to serve the masculine and the masculine to serve the feminine in an equal and balanced way, that's the way relationships were designed to be. And at some point, if you can, and I've heard of stories of people that were living in this very balanced way and decided, you know what, we're not really meant to be in this relationship, and they could walk away from each other, but it was peaceful and loving and compassionate, and there was no hurt involved, right? Like, they just, all right, this relationship isn't for us.
We've outgrown it.
Yeah, and that's okay too. Or maybe you develop into where you're together for the rest of your lives, and it is a beautiful, like, you soulmate situation. We don't know that. You don't know that. I mean, look, at some point in the future, we may outgrow each other and decide to move on. And the thought of that now, it's not even scary. I don't want that, but it doesn't frighten me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't have fear of losing her.
So that's where we release the attachment.
Yeah.
And what happens is, a lot of times we become attached to an idea of what a relationship is meant to be. And so what I was experiencing was, I was disappointed. I was hurt by the fact that the idea of the relationship that I should have had fallen apart. The attachment I had to the way the relationship was supposed to be was what was holding me back from allowing the relationship to be what it was. I didn't want to be in a relationship where I had been cheated on. That seemed like that was a big no-no, and something would have been wrong with me if I stayed in that type of relationship. So when that broke apart, it was painful. I was mortified at the fact that I was now in a relationship where cheating had been a factor. And that felt I felt like I had lost something. And I think sometimes that's really what we suffer. That really is what we grieve in our relationships, when things become difficult, when we're hurt, when there's betrayal. We grieve the image of the relationship that we thought we should have, or that we thought we had. And that's really what it is. And once we let go of that attachment to what it should look like, then we can be in what is. And sometimes what is a lot better than what we thought it should look like. And at least for us, I mean,
because you're not trying to control it.
yeah,
You're letting it grow and bloom the way a flower does, instead of trying to control it, and you end up killing it. Yeah.
oh my God, we've been on for almost 2 hours.
I know. Wow.
I think now we're just past last week.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought. Yeah, because I think that's also, I'm kind of there, because I mean, just on the way home from
Big
church
train.
today, I was I told Nicholas, like, he said some like defensive things, and I just said, okay, like, if that's like what you want. And one of them was, he's like, you know what, I can't see you anymore. And this was just like an hour before we started this. And I'm like, okay, like, if like that's like how you feel, and if I just kind of said, okay, and I think it bothers him that
I don't like that response.
I've been like,
I feel like I'm
like,
not important. Like, it's not affecting her.
It's
So
a test.
it basically, like, it kind of gives me clarification that, or what do you call it? Where, like,
it reinforces the
idea that I'm not. Yeah, I am really not worthy. Or
you feel like she should be desperate for you and begging you, right? That would make you feel wanted.
That would make your ego feel wanted.
Yeah.
Because your higher self knows that it doesn't matter if she's with you or not. It's irrelevant. You're still worthy, but your ego needs the validation. And so if you say, I don't think I can see you anymore, and she doesn't say, oh my God, why? Can't we work this out?
I'm so sorry. I'll never do it again. Please, please don't leave me.
Yeah.
That's what your ego wants to hear.
Right. Yeah. And
stroke. It's a temper tantrum. It's a miniature temper tantrum. It's a passive aggressive temper tantrum.
Yeah. And
I love you, Nicholas, but I got to call you out.
And I used to, play into it. I was, a lot of times, most of the time, up until probably maybe a couple of weeks ago, I stopped kind of feeding into his ego. And because I took a step back, and I'm like, okay, well, are my actions contributing to, his reactions and just his thoughts and his ego? And so I mean, we just drove home. I turned on some worship music after he kind of said that, and I'm just, just driving, and I could tell he was like starting to break down, and like, I'm comforting him. Like, I put my hand on his back and was just like making sure like he knew that I was there, and I'm understanding of like how he's feeling. But at the end of the day, I've been saying this also a lot, like, there's only so much I can do and say. And I guess that in itself, since I've been on this spiritual journey, I've also had more peace over the situation. And to him, his ego, he's like, oh, well, she's getting over it. She's getting over me. Like, she, like, she doesn't want me, or she doesn't like me anymore. But that's so far.
Or just the things that, like, you did obviously didn't cause trauma to you, like in June. Like, it was something that did a lot of damage to me. So for her, it's easier for her to let it go because she didn't experience that. Just like she kind of says how last year, for me, it's easier for me to let it go because I wasn't the one that got cheated on. Which, it is easier. I think it is easier for the cheater to move past it because you don't want to remember it. So it's easier to kind of just let it go. Besides that, so that's why I also get so triggered when I'm seeing her making this progress, because then I just feel like, oh well, she just did this to me and it's hurting me this badly, but then I'm just seeing her kind of just get a group of friends, and she's going to church, and so she has options when she's at church. Who knows, she can meet a guy and whatever else, and then I don't have a group of people, and so when I hang out with them, I feel like it's just her friends, not my friends. I can't be vulnerable around them because they're her friends, and I kind of had a history with just a single one of those friends, so I can't lump them all together. But like, because it's a different thing to get into, but just but yeah, just
history,
seeing
more
her with a whole
stories.
different group, yeah, it's just I don't know.
But but I was just saying, like, it's so far from the truth. Like I tell him, like, Nicholas, like, I want to be with you. Like, I want to work on this. Like, I have this chemistry, and there's obviously something between us, because why are we still like here together, you know, after we've been through so much? And that's, for me, it's kind of like a reminder, just how we got here and like where we came from. And but so for me, that's kind of hard when he's like, oh, like you don't really love me, or, you know, whatever, like you're just like moving on. And um I'm not. And it's like, it's difficult for me to really, I feel like I can't really do anything at that point, because I'm between a rock and a hard place. And so
You
for me,
can't. You're
that's
not
been
responsible. You're not responsible for his feelings or the stories his ego tells him. So you're doing exactly what you can do, is be patient and compassionate with him.
And I was going to say that, you know, Nicholas, if you're having a hard time deciding whether you should stay in the relationship or not, you can make a decision to heal whatever traumas you guys have caused each other. Like, that could be the commitment that you guys make without the expectation of continuing in a relationship together moving forward. So focus on one thing at a time, right? You're trying to decide, do I stay in this relationship? But there's stuff here. This interaction, this relationship happened for a reason, right? What she did to you, what you did to her, it was all meant to trigger what needed healing in each other, in both of you. And you have the choice right now to do the work, to observe these triggers, and do take the necessary steps to heal that part. And then from there, you guys can make the decision, do we want to stay together or not? But
You're
that
not getting
way,
married right now at
there's
this
no,
moment.
yeah,
So
there's
no
no
obligation
attachment.
to be
Yeah.
together forever. Yeah. Nicholas, can you recognize that you're a better person today than you were last March? That you've done work and that you've done healing, and you've made progress since last March or last January, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. So even in the midst of all this, all these triggers, you've made progress because of the triggers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a Rumi quote that says that the wound is the place where the light enters, right? And if we weren't wounded, if we weren't getting hurt, if we weren't being triggered, we wouldn't be able to bring the healing into that particular place. So we have to break open so that the light can enter, so we can do the healing work. If we hadn't gone through all of the things that we went through, we would not have healed ourselves to the degree that we have healed now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more to go. We're still
Mm-hmm.
triggering each other. We've gone through so much. Our triggers are not as intense as they used to be. Now it's almost like remnants of some of that stuff. There, like I said, this was only a couple of months ago where I was like, oh my God, he went to the city. And then and to realize that, and I was like, oh my God, that's so funny. And to realize, like, there's a trigger there, there's a fear there that I can see that my ego kind of wants to jump in and create like drama out of nothing. And I can observe that now, and I'm like, oh, there's a little bit of that still there. Okay, let's let's look at that. And thank you, ego, for protecting me. Everything's fine. We're good. And, we continue from there. There are times where old stuff comes up and it does hurt me. And it hurts me sometimes on a deeper level. And I'm like, oh, there's still some of that pain there over this situation. Let's work through that. Let's talk about that. Sometimes I just have to tell him, yeah, I remembered this thing today, and I remembered how much it hurt me, and this is the thing that really hurt me about that situation. And we just talk about it, and now he's in a place where he can apologize for that, and it's a sincere apology, because back then it would be a defensive apology. Now he's in a place where he can sincerely apologize, and I'm like, oh, that's really all I needed to hear. Okay.
Yeah, and it
let's go.
heals that Vanessa from 5 years ago or whenever it was. The sincere apology now makes up for the fact that I couldn't sincerely apologize for it then.
So that's what we were saying before when Danny said, like, time isn't real. And to me, it's like, time isn't linear, right? We really can time travel. We really can do the work right now to heal those parts of ourselves from back there. And when we do that, it reflects throughout the entire timeline. So now when you do the mirror work to talk to 7-year-old Nicholas or 10-year-old Nicholas, that heals you in real time. That brings that part of you into your body, and now you've done some soul retrieval, right? Because what happens when we experience trauma is our piece of that piece of our soul kind of goes into hiding. That's trauma.
Not even hiding, we block it out.
Yeah.
In a way.
And so when we do that healing work, when we heal that 10-year-old, that 7-year-old, we bring that piece back into us. Now we are more whole. We are more holy, right? Because we're bringing those parts back into ourselves. And now we get to show up as the real, authentic us, and not the us that has parts that are hidden away because we're afraid to get hurt again. So it's a lifelong process, like we've said multiple times today. It's a lifelong process. It's a daily process. Every day we look at the little triggers. Every day we process one thing at a time. And that's the thing, you can only do one thing at a time. So don't feel like you have to fix it all, like your relationship has to all of a sudden be perfect, or that you can erase all of the triggers today. Like, what's the magic pill where boom, I can forget it all? It took a lot of time for me to finally let go. I was able to forgive, but I had a really hard time letting go. And that's a daily practice. And there are going to be daily triggers, and it's a matter of me tracing, okay, why does this trigger me? Why does it trigger me when he says this thing? Sometimes it has nothing to do with him. Sometimes it has to do with my own traumas with my own parents, who I think my parents were amazing. They have been amazing. They are amazing. But there were things that they said when I was little that maybe they were impatient or they were struggling, and they said something that caused me to have a belief that I carry into adulthood, and I'm healing that stuff. So sometimes Danny triggers something that my parents said years ago, and then I get mad at him, but it has nothing to do with him. So that's where we do the work to trace these little triggers. And that's how, as we start to heal them, we start to be thankful for the triggers, because it's like, oh, there's a part that I'm not healed. Okay, let's take a look at it. What is this trying to show me? And then we can appreciate it.
Yeah, like I really like what you're saying, because like when people, I guess, underestimate, I think, the power of letting go. And I think a lot of us, a lot of us just brush it underneath the rug. But to piggyback off what you were saying, Vanessa, like when you're talking about like the triggers and all of that, something that kind of kind of popped up that in my mind from the workshop was pain is for wisdom. And that like really spoke to me, because if we don't have pain, we don't learn, and we don't grow. I mean, it's and I just thought it was interesting because that's what I learned at that workshop. But they also said like the Hebrew word for pain is synonymous with the word creativity. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, because God uses that creativity out of our pain. and to use it for good instead of evil. And I just really that really resonated with me. And
Well,
because if we
creativity
don't,
is a part of the light, right?
right, and exactly.
Creativity is part of the light, and if the wound is where the light enters, then the pain is where the creativity is gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you
Yeah.
think about like some of the most popular works of art or music, it comes from people who were experiencing pain, people that were conflicted, people that were like had nowhere else to channel that pain but into actual works of art, right? It is our experience here on earth to it. That's what we're here to experience. When you're God, you have everything, right? There's no lack, there's no limitation. To come to earth is to experience separation, the illusion of separation, to the illusion of lack, the illusion of pain, the illusion of all of these things that make us human. Otherwise we would be God,
We would just
right?
stay in heaven. If we just wanted to be perfect all the time and in total bliss constantly, we could just, why come to Earth at all?
Exactly, right, and yeah, definitely, yeah. So, I just think, um, I've been trying to also just encourage Nicholas to join some of the groups, that, like, I'm into and, or just at least come to church and meet the people, like, I surround myself with because, I mean, his experience, when he first came to the church I just started going to, about a few months ago, he he loved it. Like no masks right away. Nobody wears masks there, so that was great in itself, and he really enjoyed that. But you just the Holy Spirit is there, and it's just a very lively church, and they identify as like a charismatic church,
Mm.
and um and just like the people there, like I feel when I walked in for the first time, I noticed that I just felt like I was home, and I felt like I knew these people my whole life, and that's how they were treating me. And I think I've been trying to just encourage Nicholas like to come with me and just to meet good genuine people. And I think if he surrounds himself with just like a group of men that are genuine people and that will support him and not judge him, and um, not point fingers and stuff like that, just godly men, I think that would just really benefit him. Because it's also just kind of hard with the way the world is. It's hard to kind of meet with people now, and just because of COVID or whatever, and things are just not the way they used to be. But and so yeah, I've just been trying to encourage him in that way. But yeah.
Yeah, Nicholas knows the power of men's work groups. That's for sure.
Yeah, doing the Sacred Sun stuff earlier this year.
Yeah,
That definitely helped out.
we're gonna have to wrap up now, but I want to just take a moment to tell you, Nicholas, that I see how committed you are to this work. And I understand you feel like you're stumbling through it right now because you're in the thick of it. But pretty soon you're going to have a breakthrough and you'll be like, oh, yeah, now I can see it. Now I can see that I was in this. It's like, it reminds me of the Footprints poem, right? You guys know the Footprints poem? No, so basically it's the concept. I don't remember how it goes. I don't have it memorized, but basically the concept is that the person who wrote the poem was walking with God, and all of a sudden it was only one set of footprints in the sand. And it wasn't until after he got through the struggle that he realized it was one set of footprints, not because God left him during the struggle, but because God was carrying him through the struggle. Right? And you're going to realize that too. You're going to have that breakthrough. I see you doing the work. I see how seriously you take this. And no, you're not perfect at it. None of us are. But you're committed to it and you're doing it. and you're making progress. I see you making progress.
And once you go through it a couple of times, you'll start to recognize it. Like Danny's in a place now where he'll be struggling through something and he's like, I know I'm about to have another breakthrough because I feel the struggle right now. Like I just have to struggle through it and then I'll be on the other side. And then, you know, in the beginning, when you first start facing the work and facing yourself, you want to pull back, right?
Yeah.
Like your immediate reaction is like, I don't want to have to deal with that, all of that. Once you finally get through it and realize, oh my God, there's relief on the other side. There's, you know, there's this sigh. There's this like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm taken care of. Then it's not as scary the next few times.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, Danny, when you were saying that you're gonna have a breakthrough, I was like, I fucking hope I do soon. That's why I was
Just
cracking up
trust
because
that
I
you
was,
will.
yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be really fun. I would appreciate that. Yeah. If you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just thank you guys so much because I in the past, like I've always loved watching your videos and just your honesty and authenticity, and I think that's really important. So,
Thank
and
you.
yeah,
Thank you.
growth is hard and it can be messy, but just for me, it's just been God all the way and just my relationship, for sure. So, thank you.
Yeah, and Danny, just the fact that I never have met you in person, and in January I told you my dark secret that I ended up telling Lindsay was the first person, and you were like the third or the fourth, and I never even met you. You know, a complete, basically stranger, and the fact that you showed me such compassion and love and forgiveness, and it was insane. It was crazy. I was scared to death to even say anything. So like that was huge. So I really appreciate both of you guys, and just, yeah, like she was saying, your openness and all that stuff was really inspiring for me to bring more of that out in my work, because it's whatever you can call it, unprofessional or whatever you want to say. Just show your best face or whatever in the public, like you were saying with Facebook. And no, let's try to be more open and
Let's keep it
genuine,
real.
Yeah.
keep it real, and not worry about it and censor ourselves or try to hide it as much. And yeah, so I really do appreciate it, guys. Freaking over 2 hours, and I hope I know I created the broadcast a little late, so people weren't prepped to watch us live. So basically, no one did. But but I hope that as time goes on, people are going to be watching it and taking the time to listen and really find some inspiration and maybe some similarities in their own lives, and it can help them work through it. So thank you guys so much for your insight and just
Thank
everything that you
you.
guys said. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
All was very resonating with me. So yeah, let's hope you guys have a great night and stay safe. Okay.
Awesome. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Love you,
And
Nicholas.
thank you,
Yeah.
everybody, for watching, and thanks, Lindsay, for being a part of this too. I appreciate it.
Sure.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.